talk about my favorite books of the year so far. Hello, and welcome to a new video. My name is Smriti, and I love to read books. I love to read books of various different genres all over the place. And today I'm going to talk to you about my favorite books of the year so far. So, from the month of January to June, I have had 7 5-star reads, which is not bad but not good either. I would obviously prefer to have more 5-star reads. So, before I begin, I have a favor to ask of you. If you could just comment down below a book that you think I would love and would give a 5-star to, that would be really amazing. Just to give you a little brief, in case you haven't seen my channel before and don't know what sort of books I like to read anything with great characters. Characters is my thing. I love great writing, and yeah, just anything that makes me feel emotions, if that makes sense to you. So yeah, that is that. I hope that you let me know what you think I will enjoy down in the comments, and meanwhile let me tell you what I enjoyed so far this year. So let's get into it. So the first 2 books that I want to talk to you about are part of a series. So the first one is the Six of Crows series. So I loved the second book, which is it's a duology. So I like the second book of this, which is Crooked Kingdom. Essentially, we are following a world in which there is magic. It's like elemental magic of sorts, and it is sort of like a spin-off of the Shadow and Bone series, in case you know about that. And we follow a bunch of kids, essentially, who are about 17 to 18 years old, but we follow them as they are trying to make it in this place called Ketterdam, and they get into heists and they get into all of these different sort of really exciting situations. And I think that this book was really great because you got to know more about the characters and you really felt like you knew them, and you just got more invested. And also I just loved how fast paced it was, and how it just had you in its grips because there was so much happening. And I really enjoyed that aspect of it, and yeah, that's why it is a 5-star read for me, and was one of my best reads of this year so far. The next book that is part of a series is actually the beginning of a series, and that is the Veronica Speedwell series. So this book is called A Curious Beginning, and essentially we are following Veronica Speedwell, who is a lady who is in the 18th century of sorts in England, and she has, in the beginning we find out that her guardians have passed away, and then she gets into some sort of hijinks, and she meets this person called Stoker, who helps her out, and it's just really interesting. I love the sort of stuff that they sort of went through. I love Veronica and Stoker as characters, and I love the banter that they have between them. I thought the banter was just supreme and amazing, and I just really enjoyed that aspect of the book. And overall, I have been also reading the entire series as well, and just absolutely adoring it. I have finished 5 books in the series so far, but I still think that the first one was one of my favorites. And maybe it was just because it introduced me to this character and world and all of that, but I don't know, I just really enjoyed this series. So that is the second book that I have to talk to you about. The third one is a surprise, but not really a surprise, because I had heard really good things about this book, but it's not really a genre that I go for, which is horror fantasy. And I read this book called Ring Shout by P. Jelly Clark, and this book was just so amazing in terms of not just the writing and the plot and the characters and all of that, but just the idea of it. So the idea is that we are in Civil War era in the US, and there is the Ku Klux Klan, the KKK. Okay, it's a little hard for me to say it. It sounds like a a thing, keep saying Ku Klux Klan, Ku Klux Klan. It doesn't happen. Anyway, we are following this person who's basically a KKK hunter, because it turns out that some people who are in the KKK are actual monsters. They are real monsters, and I just loved how P. Jelly Clark made this fantastical sort of thing where like he's comparing these horrible things that the KKK did and made them into like actual monsters, which is what they really were. And it's basically following these three people, three girls, but most importantly, this one particular girl called Maurice, and how they are fighting this thing, and there's something that's happening that's going to lead to this big thing. And it was just really, really interesting the way that was done. It was very fast paced. Really enjoyed the audiobook that I checked out as well. I think it is on Scribd, so if you want to check that out, you really should. I would highly suggest the audiobook for this because I think that it added to my experience as well. And I just thought that like this whole idea, as well as like the plot, the characters, everything just really came together in this really seamless sort of way that made me sort of be like, oh, how is this person so smart, and how did this person think of such a thing? And yeah, I just really, really enjoyed it, and it's a short book as well, so would recommend highly. Next, I want to talk about an Indian thriller that I read that I was completely taken by. Now, this book is not a thriller in its true sense, because you're not like, oh my god, what's going to happen next, etc., etc. It is basically telling you about the world that we live in, and it's sort of like a social commentary on things. And this book is called Black River by Nilanjana S. Roy. Nilanjana S. Roy is a prolific Indian writer who has written a lot of different sort of books, but this one was just so interesting because essentially we are following the death of a very young girl in a village which is close to Delhi, and we see what exactly has happened to her, and we're trying to solve that case. But through that, we get to understand what the criminal justice system is like. We get to understand what it's like to be in a village, what like the politics is like, and we're also following other people in Delhi. So like the father's friend, and like she's a Muslim, and the sort of things that are happening with the far right movement and how that's affecting people in a very, very real sort of way. And I thought that this was so interesting that we got to hear of this story, which is obviously we're trying to figure out what has happened to this little girl, but also we get like commentary on a very real sort of India that we live in. And I just thought that was so seamlessly done, and I just thought that that was like absolutely brilliant. So this is a book that I would definitely recommend to people, but just go into it knowing that it's not like a thriller. You know, you're not gonna be like, oh my god, edge of my seat sort of stuff, but it is a really, really good book that is very well written, and the characters and everything have just been absolutely brilliant, and I just was completely immersed in it. Now, my next three books are definitely my top three. The others were sort of like, I don't know, they could have been moved around, but these three books are definitely my top three. And the third place is going to go to Nothing to See Here by Kevin Wilson. This was a book that completely had me surprised. I had always sort of seen this book around and thought that like I would read it because I thought that the well, to be frank, I thought the cover looked really interesting. And as you can see here, it's basically a kid on fire, because essentially what happens is we're following these two children who spontaneously combust, and nothing happens to them per se, like they are fine when they literally are on fire, but it's just like whenever they feel like very strong emotions, this happens. And they are the stepkids to this one lady, whose husband is like running for like senator, or like he's gonna be like home minister or something like that. I'm not too sure, but like essentially we are following her as she gets in her best friend from school, to come and like sort of be their nanny and like look after these kids. And we follow this girl named Lillian, and she's obviously going through stuff. She's not doing really well in life, and how she cares for these two children. I just thought that the relationship that they had was so pure and like innocent and just absolutely lovely. I just loved the weirdness of this all, but also like amongst the weirdness, the like absolute love and the affection that people have for each other, and how they sort of build those bonds, and just like the pureness and like, I don't know, the care and affection. I just loved how that was put across in this like really weird sort of state that we are put in. And yeah, I think these characters and everyone are going to like stick with me for a long period of time. And this book may not be for a lot of people because you have to like suspend your imagination a little bit, and it's really like strange. But I just thought that like it was really, really well done, and I was just in love with what Kevin Wilson did with this book. So yeah. Now, second place is going to go to Lie With Me by Philip Benson, and it is a translated book from French to English, and I think it's translated by Molly Ringwald. And this is, I mean, it could be like autofiction because the main character in this book is Philip, and essentially we are following him as he meets someone in like this hotel, and he is like a really famous author, etc., etc. But we are following him as he meets this person in a hotel, and he's thinks that like he looks exactly like a lover that he had when he was young, and essentially like of course it's a queer love story, and we get to see him like think about his past and this like torrid love affair that he had with this boy in his school and what that was like. And it was just so beautifully done and just so well told and well written that I don't know, it just was just absolutely stunning. And I feel like this book, I feel like the reason why I love this book even more is just like how smart the like book title is, because it's Lie With Me, because they lied about like, you know, themselves and like not being able to come out to people and stuff like that, but also like they were lying together in bed, and like one person would be like, lie down with me after, you know, they had sex essentially. And it's just I loved this book so much, and like I would definitely read it again. It's a very short book, but I would so highly recommend this book as just not just like a book that you would read for like queer literature, but just a book that you would read and take in and just, I don't know, just completely be immersed and like fully, I don't know, in awe of the writing, I guess. It was just really well told, and I loved how like seamless the past to present sort of thing was, and just like how we get to see these different characters and what happened with them and all of that. I just thought that it was absolutely brilliant and will wholeheartedly recommend. And of course, my number one book of the year so far, which I have just spoken about in my mid-year freak out tag. If you have watched that, then I mean, if you haven't, then watch it, but it's fun anyway. Is Funny Boy by Sham Salvadorai. This book just I knew that I was gonna love it, and I kind of felt bad that I didn't read it beforehand, because I would have been talking about this non-stop before. But this book is just so wonderful. Essentially, we are following this young boy named Arji in Sri Lanka before like sort of the civil war sort of happened, so like maybe 80s of sorts. And we are seeing him through various vignettes that have taken place in his life, and it sort of goes in a chronological sort of order, but essentially we see him through various like instances that have happened in his life, and through each of them we get to understand more about him and his family and like other people in his life. And essentially he himself is dealing with the fact that like, you know, he might be gay, and like he is, but like he's coming to like understand that, and he's also like young and full of like innocence, and he's trying to like see what's happening there with himself, but also like with other things in his family. So like his cousin sister who's getting married but falls in love with like a wrong person, or with his mother and what that was like, or his father, and just like a bunch of these different sort of stories that are really, really like well told, and just give you an understanding of what all is happening, not just in his life and his family's life, but also what's happening in Sri Lanka, because this was sort of a build up to the Sri Lankan civil war, and how there was so much of hatred towards the Tamil versus the Sinhalese, who are another sort of sect or like another sort of people in Sri Lanka, and how they had this huge animosity towards the Tamil. And yeah, we just sort of see that like sort of build up over a time, and it's just really, really well done, and I absolutely adore it and would wholeheartedly recommend. But yeah, those are the 7 books that I've given 5 stars too so far this year. I hope that these are books that you have either read or that you will read. So do let me know which books you plan to read, because I would love to know what you think about it. And as I said, please do give me recommendations down below. And if you have reached the end and don't want to like comment any of those things, but want to let me know that you have reached here, you can give me a flowers. Just give me all the flowers. I would love that. And yeah, that's all for now. I will see you next with a bunch of other videos. And goodbye. I said videos like a weird person, like with a dub. Okay, I'm gonna go now. Bye.